This tutorial will focus on plant defences against disease. It will be relatively quick and just look at a number of general mechanisms that plants use, but it's worth noting that the plants have quite complex ways of defending themselves against disease that range from physical barriers through to various chemical responses as well. So let's have a quick look at the possibilities for plants. This particular diagram shows a couple of the different levels at which plant defense can occur. So clearly there are going to be basic structural barriers for plants, and in many cases this comprises the waxy cuticle that forms the outer layer of leaves and can be quite difficult to penetrate by pathogens. But again, like in human infection, if there's some kind of break in intact skin, it provides an entry point or a wound where pathogens can enter the internal environment of the body. And likewise in plants, if there is a wound that breaks through the outer surface of leaves or stems or parts of a plant, it also provides an entry point for pathogens such as fungi or bacteria or viruses to enter into a plant. We'll have a look at how plants just generally defend themselves against larger organisms such as those that eat parts of plants a little bit later. If a pathogen makes it into the inside of a plant, into the environment that surrounds the cells, then there are a variety of chemical inhibitors and chemicals that can destroy pathogens that are produced by various plant cells. Over this side we see various inhibitors, so chemicals that inhibit the function of pathogens. So preformed inhibitors are inhibitors that are made before infection, and a number are named there. And over this side we see another set of chemical responses that include a key group called the Phytoalexins and a number of other enzymes that can be involved in protecting the plant against infection. It's interesting to note just how complex such a response can be, and although you don't need to know all the detail of what's in this diagram, it does give you a little bit of a sense of the kind of things that go on when a pathogen gains entry to a plant. And again, like in our own system where much of it remains invisible, this would also be true of plant infection. So it might be worth just pausing the tutorial for a moment and have a good look at what's being shown in this diagram. So again we can see a pathogen such as a fungus gaining access to the inside of a cell through the cell wall, through some kind of wound entry point, or a bacterium that could also gain entry into the cell. And just like we've been talking about in this course, signal transduction plays a critical role in the recognition of these pathogens and the response that comes about. And signal transduction works in general terms in exactly the same way as we have talked about it in this course in animal bodies. So here is shown a pathogen recognition signal, which will involve some kind of chemical, a set of chemical reactions, a signal cascade, which will trigger some kind of activation of DNA in plant nucleus, which will lead to the various productions of proteins, which could be enzymes or other kinds of proteins that act as microbial substances, which then in turn will act on the pathogen that has invaded the cell. Over here we can see another pathogen, in this case a virus. In this case, again, recognition signals that trigger DNA activation, which will lead to some kind of response. It could be immunosuppressive molecules that are produced, could be various proteins. In some cases, such a response could be apoptosis, so programmed cell death. There are also signaling molecules that may warn other cells to start preparing for such a defense. So you can see that it's quite a complex set of signal transduction responses that help the plant to fight off a source of infection. In this particular diagram, I don't expect you to know any of the detail at all, so I'm not showing it to you to learn some of the various abbreviations, but what I do want you to take note of again is the fact that signal transduction is heavily involved in plants recognising pathogens, responding to them. So again, we can see the stimulus is going to be a pathogen that attacks or breaks through the outer coating of a cell, of a leaf, for example, or a plant. It could be that part of a plant is damaged or wounded, and this releases various hormones or other stresses of the plant. And again, there's a signal involved, a signal cascade, which is going to activate various defense-related genes, which in turn will lead to the production of various proteins, signaling of neighbouring cells via signal transduction to stimulate those cells to start producing antimicrobial substances and so on. So again, just another diagram to illustrate this complex response. In this photo here, we could see a set of physical barriers to microbes that might be attempting to get into a plant. And again, at a microscopic level, you can see what a hostile environment this plant surface actually is. Again, I offer this diagram not for you to learn the complexity of it, but again to just observe the general complexity of what goes on in signal transduction. And again, you don't need to be aware of any of the abbreviations of molecules, but it might be worth again just taking a moment to pause the tutorial and have a look at the description of the diagram down here, because it's interesting again just to see the kind of complexity of biochemical reactions that are involved in this process. And finally, to finish this tutorial, I just wanted to focus on one particular chemical inhibitor that works against various pathogens, and the general name given to this group of antimicrobial chemicals, molecules, is Phytoalexins. And these are various antimicrobial substances that plants make that can act against a whole variety of pathogens and invasions of a particular plant. They're toxins. They have a variety of functions. They may puncture cell walls. They might disrupt metabolism in some way. They might prevent reproduction of pathogens. So they act in a whole variety of ways to help protect a plant against infection.